The Queen's Birthday Honours 1959 were appointments in many of the Commonwealth realms of Queen Elizabeth II to various orders and honours to reward and highlight good works by citizens of those countries. The appointments were made to celebrate the official birthday of the Queen. The announcement date varies both from year to year and from country to country. The 1959 Queen's Birthday Honours for New Zealand were announced on the 13th of June 1959. New Zealand. Knight Bachelor the Honourable Timothy Patrick Cleary, a Judge of the Court of Appeal of New Zealand. Alexander Gillies MCF-RCSED of Wellington, for services to orthopaedic surgery. The Honourable Alfred Kingsley North, a Judge of the Court of Appeal of New Zealand. Order of St. Michael and St. George, Companion of the Order of St. Michael and St. George Robert Alexander Fowler, Director of the Dominion Museum. The Reverend Hubert James Ryburn, Master of Knox College, Dunedin, and Chancellor of the University of Otago. Order of the British Empire. Knight Commander of the Order of the British Empire Civil Division Charles Cotton, Emeritus Professor of Geology at Victoria University College, Wellington. Commander of the Order of the British Empire Civil Division Christopher Robert John Atkin, Controller and Auditor General, Audit Department. Walter Verendire OBEJP, Chairman of Massey College Council. For services to education, Alan Thomas Gandel, General Manager of the New Zealand Railways. John Ubridge Mercer MBCHB, Pathologist and Deputy Superintendent-in-Chief of the Wellington Public Hospital. Military Division Captain John Neat Allen VRD, Royal New Zealand Naval Volunteer Reserve. Officer of the Order of the British Empire Civil Division Kenneth Mackenzie Black JP, President of the New Zealand Federation of Justices Association. Charles Foster Brown, Organist and Master of Choristers, Christchurch Cathedral. Miss Frances Lillian Burdett, lately Lady Superintendent of the Alexandra Home, Wellington. For services to nursing, Percival Douglas Cameron MD, of Wellington. For services to radiology in New Zealand, Henry Lexus Charles, of Napier. For philanthropic services, Hubert Maxwell Christie JP, of Wellington. For public services, Wampo Fraser JP, Principal of the Technical College, Hamilton. Francis Albert Gary, Principal of Northcote Higher and Intermediate School, and a member of the New Zealand Educational Institute. Rangi Mafate, of Palmerston North. For services to the Maori people, George Ronald Collinmaston, of Lower Hutt. For services to architecture, Lawrence William Nelson, of Northland. For municipal and philanthropic services, Ronald Earl White, Mayor of Timaru. Military Division Commander John Ernle Washburn, Royal New Zealand Navy. Lieutenant Colonel Ian Thomas Galloway Ed, Royal New Zealand Armoured Corps. Wing Commander William Clemens Thomas, Royal New Zealand Air Force. Member of the Order of the British Empire Civil Division George William Adair, of Auckland. For services to the community under the auspices of the Young Men's Christian Association, William Hamilton Barry, of Napier. For services in local body and community affairs, Miss Annie Mona Bergen, of Auckland. For services to the Girl Guide movement, Sydney Thomas Carter JP, of Auckland, Organising Secretary of the Returned Services Association. George Robert Elliott Day, of Rotorua. For social welfare services, Frederick Fraser JP, of Dunedin. For services to the community, Archibald Kirk Greaves JP, of Auckland. For services to the community, especially on school committees, George Claude Hamilton, of Gore. For services to local government, Arthur Stanley Helm, Secretary of the Antarctic Society, Wellington. John William Huggins JP, of Christchurch. For social welfare services, Miss Isabella McAndrew Jameson of Hamilton. For services to education, Isaac Pretorius Matheson, Superintendent of Waitakere Prison, Hitaunga. Miss Lucy Beatrice Moore, a senior botanist in the Department of Scientific and Industrial Research. Mrs. Margaret Constance Robertson of Westport. For services to the community, Ariki Marie Huatakarangi of Wanganui. For services to the Maori people, Norman Edward Tate of Auckland. For social welfare services, Sydney Turnbull J.P. of Woodville. For services in local body affairs, Military Division Lieutenant Commander Frederick William Ralph, Royal New Zealand Navy. Major William McGregor Cunningham, Royal New Zealand Dental Corps. Major Ian Richard Diggle, Royal Regiment of New Zealand Artillery. Warrant Officer Class 2 Edward James Gill Fill-in, Royal Regiment of New Zealand Artillery. Warrant Officer Class 1 James Joseph Page, the New Zealand Regiment. Flight Lieutenant Paul Arthur Brodie, Royal New Zealand Air Force. Warrant Officer William Henry Rush, Royal New Zealand Air Force. Companion of the Imperial Service Order Cecil Henry Benny, Under-Secretary of Mines. Harold Bertram Turbot MBCHB, Deputy Director General of the Department of Health. British Empire Medal Civil Division Miss Annie Neil Clampton, Senior Matron, Arihata Borstal Institution, Tawe Flat. Lionel Gordon, lately Constable in Charge, Otorawanga Police District, New Zealand Police Force. Military Division Chief Petty Officer Walter Thomas Evans, Royal New Zealand Navy. Sick Berth Chief Petty Officer Walter Bernard Northcote, Royal New Zealand Naval Volunteer Reserve. Leading Cook Eric Gordon Scoble, Royal New Zealand Navy. Chief Electrician Ronald Victor Sutherland, Royal New Zealand Navy. Sergeant Leslie Osborne Duff, Royal New Zealand Electrical and Mechanical Engineers. Staff Sergeant Morris William Loveday, Royal New Zealand Army Ordnance Corps. Staff Sergeant Ian Walker Telfer, Royal New Zealand Infantry. Warrant Officer Class 2 Raymond Edward White, Royal New Zealand Signals. Flight Sergeant Irene Elsie Jarman, Women's Royal New Zealand Air Force. Sergeant Albert Victor Williams, Royal New Zealand Air Force. Air Force Cross Squadron Leader Richard Bruce Bolt DFC, Royal New Zealand Air Force. Squadron Leader Malcolm Stewart Gunton, Royal New Zealand Air Force. Air Force Medal Flight Sergeant Hamilton Rex Hunt, Royal New Zealand Air Force. Queen's Police Medal for Distinguished Service Frank Norman Applin, Detective Chief Superintendent, New Zealand Police Force. Queen's Commendation for Valuable Service in the Air Flight Lieutenant Duncan Cumming, Royal New Zealand Air Force.